Oh, hey! Do you like true crime, ghosts, forensic psychology, and discussions about the paranormal and cults? Of course you do. So come join us at the Millennial Therapist Podcast with Mao and Neo.
This is not your typical mental health podcast where only mental health and social work topics are discussed. We dabble in various topics from cultural humility to military mental health to ghosts to interesting ways our parents use the paranormal to discipline us. Ed Kukuy, anyone?
Why so many topics? Because we're millennials. So come join the Millennial Therapist Podcast with Mao and Neo. You can find us at Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Till next time, homies.
True Consequences is a true crime and mystery podcast with stories based in New Mexico and the American Desert Southwest. I'm your host, Eric Carter-Landin. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of True Consequences podcast. And before we get started today, I just need to send some thank you shout outs to Carla Benavides for being a patron, to Deborah Wales, to Katie Silva Garcia. I want to thank Raylene Knight. I want to thank Autumn Mason. I want to thank Sonia Gunter. Thank you, Brittany McDaniel. Thank you, Lucy Farr. Thank you, Heather Cowan. Thank you so much to all of you for your patronage. You help keep this show going and you help keep me going. So thank you so much. Just a reminder, if you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/trueconsequences. You'll get access to ad-free episodes early. You'll get merchandise as well as a signed note from me. And I am behind on those, but I promise I will get them out ASAP. Thanks again so much for your support. Okay, let's get into this case today. I have had several requests to cover this case, and it is definitely very mysterious. But before we get into that, I want to set some background for where this case is located. And if you've been a listener of the show for a long time, you may have already heard a lot of this information, and I apologize for that. But this is for those people who are tuning in for the first time or have not had a chance to listen to the back catalog. Anybody who knows me knows that Taos, New Mexico is one of my favorite places in New Mexico. It is so beautiful, the mountains and the grass, and it is just one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been. And that's where we're going to be heading to today. Taos is a small town in northern New Mexico, which is situated at the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The town is known for its vibrant culture and beautiful scenery, and over the years has been featured in many movies such as Easy Runner and The Sundance Kid. That's made it an ideal bucket list destination for tourists worldwide. Taos is only 73 miles north of Santa Fe and 133 miles north of Albuquerque. Taos is known worldwide for its popular art scene. There's a large number of museums and galleries that people can visit. There's focus on contemporary and traditional art. It's also home to the Taos Pueblo, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site with multi-story adobe complexes built over 1,000 years ago. Living amongst the small population of 6,000 people was a woman, 49-year-old Holly White, with her husband Jeff and their dog Rosie. Today, we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Holly White. This is True Consequences. I'm your host, Eric Carter-Landin. Holly moved from Albuquerque to Taos in the early 1990s after her husband Jeff was offered a job as a parts manager at Cottom Walker Ford. Holly began working for the Taos Center for the Arts a short while later, and she eventually became the manager. She held this job for 22 years and was super proud of her work within the Taos art community. In May of 2004, Holly featured in an article about her life and work, and she spoke of her ambition to eventually travel the world, especially Europe. She states that her overall dream is to find a wealthy benefactor for the Center of the Arts. She believed the community would benefit hugely from this. Within the article, she also discussed her voluntary service as co-chairman for the Taos Living Treasures program, The Taos Living Treasures program sought to recognize and award elders in the community for their lifetime of voluntary service. Holly loved to read, watch movies, go shopping, and spend time with her friends, and on the Find Holly White page, her father describes her as having very high balanced energy and says that she was easy to be around. He claimed that Holly would brighten anyone's day simply by spending time with them or even speaking to them on the phone. And Holly's friends stated that her smile and laugh was incredible. They share so many memories of great times that they experienced together on the Find Holly White Facebook page. In 2016, Holly and her husband decided to leave Taos and move back to Albuquerque. Unfortunately, this meant that Holly had to give up her position at the Taos Center for the Arts. But according to her friends, even though she was a little bit stressed out about this, she was excited for the move and was looking forward to starting a new job at a dentist's office. Holly's husband Jeff had secured a job at a Chevy dealer and had already moved to Albuquerque, where he was awaiting his wife's arrival in their new home. Holly's day began as usual on Thursday, March 5th, 2016. She spent the day at work and returned home later that evening, where she reportedly spoke to a few of her friends via the internet. Holly then called her husband Jeff, who also claimed that she seemed to be in a good mood. The pair spoke about Jeff returning to Taos so the couple could attend Holly's going-away party together. Her last communication with anyone was at 9:20 p.m. that evening. Holly was due to go for a walk along a local trail with her friend Cynthia the following morning, something that she had done every day for 8 years. Now, reports vary here. From what I could find, there are some reports that say that this was a daily walk, and there were some that say it was a weekly walk. I'm not quite sure which one it is, but I do know that she was known to take this walk frequently. When Holly didn't show up, Cynthia was extremely concerned. She knew that Holly would have called to cancel or would have alerted her if something was wrong, so this behavior was completely out of character for her. Cynthia traveled to Holly's house. As she entered the property, she found Holly's dog Rosie inside alone, waiting to be walked. Holly's purse and phone sat inside, and her car was missing from outside of the home. 10 miles outside of Taos at the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge, Holly's blue Ford had been spotted by a vendor working at the gorge. The vendor claimed that the car had sat there since they arrived at 6:15 a.m., and that they hadn't seen anyone inside or around the car at that time. Authorities eventually located the car keys in a cup holder within the vehicle, and after searching the bridge, they realized Holly was nowhere to be seen within the immediate area. The steel arch bridge looming 600 feet above the Rio Grande River is sadly known as a popular suicide spot amongst locals. There's an average of 2.5 people that will travel to complete suicide there every year. And according to mailmagazine.com, one woman traveled over 4,800 miles from England to the bridge. She photographed her entire journey, and then she took her own life. Steve Miera from the Taos County Sheriff's Office states that he can't remember a single year in his 26 years of service where a suicide hasn't taken place at the bridge. Discussing the grueling recovery process that takes place whenever the familiar report comes across his radio, he says, quote, "I don't even know how I deal with it. It is going to affect these people, and it is going to cause PTSD in these people. I'm sure it already has, in some cases. I protect myself by shutting it off, and I use my discipline and my respect for these people and for their families to maintain that professional presence so that the remains continue with dignity and the families are treated with dignity. And then I get ready for the next day." End quote. Despite numerous local petitions pleading to have barriers or prevention netting put in place, and detailing the effectiveness of both when reducing suicide, the work is yet to be carried out. It is estimated that over 50 people have completed suicide on the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge since 1991, when official records began, which makes it a huge suicide rate for such a small town. Given the location of Holly's car and her sudden lack of contact with family and friends, authorities assumed that Holly, like many others, had taken her own life on the bridge. However, Holly didn't leave a note, and her friends and family claim adamantly that she would never have left her dog alone at home for such a long period of time. They insist that she had a long, happy marriage with her husband, and that there were no warning signs of depression, and Holly never gave anyone the impression that she was feeling suicidal or struggling mentally. Authorities quickly began a search of the river beneath the bridge and were assisted by a dive team and raft guides, as well as cadaver dogs and numerous other rescue workers. Together they searched 12 miles of the riverbed and the surrounding land, but they were unable to locate Holly's body. The only piece of evidence they were able to find within the water was a single black Skechers tennis shoe, which was later confirmed to be Holly's by her family and friends. They speculate the possibility of Holly's shoe being thrown into the water by a third party in order to confuse investigators. Fingerprints were taken from the passenger side door and rearview mirror of Holly's car, but the results were inconclusive, although the exact details of this statement have never been made clear. Her best friend Jill says that regardless of Holly's secrets, she didn't deserve to die, and hopes that Holly's body will be found in order to allow her family to grieve properly and receive closure. She does not believe that Holly took her own life and thinks that she was a victim of foul play. Holly's husband Jeff was still in Albuquerque when she mysteriously vanished. Authorities questioned him extensively before ruling him out following the results of a polygraph test. The police have never revealed if there were any other persons of interest in this case, and 5 years on, Holly's case remains open as a missing persons investigation. At the time of Holly's disappearance, she was described as 5 foot 11 inches tall and 200 pounds. She had green eyes and light brown hair. In August 2016, Holly's father longed for the traditional phone call they'd had every year on her birthday, hoping to hear her voice again. Unfortunately, as her 50th birthday passed, the phone call never came. Months later, her father, Ray Alcott, funded another search of the Rio Grande, which took place in October of 2016. This time, the searchers focused on a more southern area of the river between mile marker 16 and San Juan Pueblo Bridge. The water level was significantly lower at this time compared to May, and in total, they searched approximately 15 miles in kayaks and on foot. There had also been 2 extensive searches of the surrounding land carried out prior. Sadly, Holly was not located during any of these searches, and no further evidence of Holly's clothing or possessions were found in or around the gorge. We're going to take a quick break. And we're back. Most victims of suicide are found within the Rio Grande Gorge fairly quickly, given the vast areas of land and narrow river below the bridge. However, many people compare Holly White's case to the disappearance of Melissa Crabtree, a 51-year-old musician from Taos. She disappeared almost 4 years after Holly, under similar circumstances. Melissa had thousands of fans on her personal Facebook page and shared her experience of touring Australia as a musician in 2019. She also worked as a kayak guide and an endangered species observer. Her last post on Facebook was her discussing her experience of swimming with green turtles off the coast of Indonesia. In February of 2020, Melissa's brother alerted authorities after not hearing from her for almost 2 weeks. Following a search of her home, the police quickly located Melissa's car, parked at the Rio Grande Gorge parking lot. Again, no sign of Melissa in the area. And unfortunately, in Melissa's case, her friends and family believe that she was struggling with suicidal thoughts and may have been possibly dealing with physical health issues following a diagnosis of Lyme disease in 2014. According to TaosNews.com, if left untreated, Lyme disease can spread to joints, heart, and nervous system and cause ongoing health problems that would be extremely difficult to deal with. Regardless, Melissa's disappearance still came as a shock to everyone who knew her, and there was no sign of her ever since, despite numerous continued searches in the area. Another case that gained national attention almost exactly a year later, Juan Munoz, a National Guardsman in New Mexico who suddenly disappeared. Juan was last seen at the National Guard Armory in Rio Rancho on Saturday, February 20th, 2021. He was scheduled to spend the weekend there, but after failing to report to a drill the following morning, his sergeant reported him missing. Juan's car was found 126 miles away at the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge a short while later. His phone, ID, wallet, and car keys were all inside of his vehicle. And like Holly, Juan never indicated to his family that he was struggling with suicidal thoughts. His mother was alarmed after hearing all of Juan's possessions had been left behind, something she claims he never would have done. Security guards at the Rio Grande Gorge had reportedly seen Juan's vehicle in the parking lot on the evening of Saturday, February 20th, the last day that he was seen. They claimed that another vehicle had arrived shortly after Juan's vehicle and stayed a few minutes before speeding off quickly. After 3 months of extensive searching, in May of 2021, Juan's body was located in the Rio Grande River. His cause of death has not yet been released to the public. Since Holly's disappearance in 2016, her family had been working closely with Elaine Graves, a private investigator, with the hope that they will finally be able to locate Holly. Elaine runs the Find Holly White page and provides regular updates about the search as well as personal updates from Holly's father, Ray. In an interview with Taos News, Elaine urges people to think back to Mother's Day weekend 2016 to see if they remember observing anything strange that may have been significant to Holly's case. She claims to have spent months trawling through Holly's phone and computer data to see if she can find anything that may lead to clues about what happened on the evening of May 5th. She hopes that facial recognition software and DNA may eventually lead to answers, and is quoted saying, quote, "I have to tell you, it's a roller coaster. Some days you're really hopeful and there's a lot of forward movement in the case, and then sometimes it's discouraging. You just keep going. A lot of these cases are solved years later. Not every case is solved right away. I will look for Holly as long as it takes to find her. I will never stop looking for Holly." End quote. Elaine has also published an appeal on the Find Holly White Facebook page in 2017 asking for information about a black car that was seen in Holly's driveway around the time she disappeared. She says the car is unfamiliar to all of Holly's family and friends, and that a neighbor reported the vehicle as being a black Toyota Solara with Colorado license plates. A similar car was found abandoned a short while later on Highway 285 near the New Mexico and Colorado border. The license plates had been removed from the vehicle. In an interview conducted in April of 2020, Holly's husband Jeff discusses his shock at his wife's disappearance. He found it extremely hard to accept and says that Holly liked everybody, so it didn't make sense to him. He talks about he has finally accepted it all of these years later, and is now just desperate for closure and an ending to this painful mystery. According to the Find Holly White Facebook page, Jeff took a year off of work following Holly's disappearance and tried to pull his life back together. He describes their 20-year marriage as common and fun, and he says that they rarely argued. Jeff also doesn't believe Holly completed suicide, but he does say that Holly was down and stressed in the days leading up to the move. Regardless, he said that she had a closet full of new clothes and was intent on starting over at her new job. Finally, he states that he doesn't believe Holly was the kind of person to run away and would never have left everyone behind to worry about her without providing answers. As it stands, due to the low guardrail and lack of safety surrounding the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge, authorities are currently unable to determine whether people who have fallen to their death have done so accidentally or deliberately. Elaine, the private investigator, published a recent update on her Facebook page stating that a new $150,000 bill had been signed by New Mexico lawmakers and Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham to install security cameras at the bridge, as well as making various other improvements to increase public safety. Elaine states that although these improvements are too late to help Holly, they will be able to eliminate the possibility of another mystery occurring on the bridge. Holly's father, Ray, speaks regularly of his devastation about not knowing his daughter's whereabouts. On the 5th anniversary, he wrote the following statement to Will Hooper, a writer at Taos News. Quote, "It's been 5 long years and challenging, not only for me, but for Holly's family and friends, which she had many. We have posted on Holly's Facebook page as much information as possible to inform those interested, and we heartfelt thank everyone for their support. Personally, I'm hanging in there and doing okay. I miss Holly very much and think of her every day and what might have happened. Finding Holly has been a slow process because it seems things must happen in a certain order to be successful. To Holly's family and friends, don't turn out the lights. We're not done yet." End quote. He also wrote the following poem for Holly and named it "Tears in the Rain." "It wasn't long ago the bright sky would light my way. The sound of softness was about my path. My worth was in alignment with creation. From one precious moment and breath to another, a symphony of universal instruments expressing its laughter as I entertained my earth experience. Then there came to be this dark cloud which appeared all at once into my life. Someone was gone. As the rain announced its presence, the feeling of great loss was absorbed into the core of my being. The essence of my physical expression poured out, and there were tears in the rain. From under the darkness, I peered out only to find the world denying me of my complete self. I stumbled about searching for a glimmer of this precious light that seasoned my life and found silence. In the remote corners of creation, there morphed an expression of reality that could only mean a loss of this blessed, beautiful energy form. There were tears in the rain. So I continue my journey and reach out into the darkness and light all the candles I can from here to there and everywhere. I am aware there are many souls out there whose resonance with this life form energy cannot be denied. By embracing each other with collective clarity and love, we can reach out to the universe with our songs of concern. I believe the collective essence of our light forces will flow in the direction of resolution, and one day in the mist, a candle will shine bright for all of us. And there will be no more tears in the rain. Ray. Now that you've listened to the narrative, I've done a couple of interviews regarding this case, because I really wanted to make sure that we portrayed this in the best way possible. So the first interview you're going to hear is from Holly's father, Ray. And Ray's going to tell us about Holly and what she meant to him and who she was as a person. Listen now as Ray discusses his daughter, Holly. My whole goal with this is to help your family get some more awareness and hopefully, get some more tips or more information that will help this investigation. But for the purpose of this call, I don't really want to make you relive everything. If you're okay, the couple of questions I'd like to talk about, the first one would be if you could tell me about Holly and what she meant to you and your family, and anything that you want to share about her, anything that made her special, or anything that you feel is important, because one of the big things I do with my show is that I always want to focus on humanizing people that are involved in these cases. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're okay with that, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Holly and who she was and anything that you'd like to share.
Okay. Well, she was very down to earth and balanced, a very balanced person, very aware. I think she loved being who she was. I think her days were filled with optimism about her future and so forth. She was very easy to be around, fun to be around, no anxieties of any kind, just kind of a free spirit. And that's what makes this case so unbelievable. The way it's been going, it's just the biggest mystery I think I've ever been aware of in my life. What did happen to her? We don't know, of course. But, we had our phone calls over the past quite a few years, and we always enjoyed talking on the phone. The conversations usually lasted over an hour and so forth, and we laughed and talked about old times and so forth. So, she was a fun person. Great daughter, very conscientious of herself and who and what she was and so forth. But, I don't know. I'm not subject like this, but... That's
perfect. As she was growing up, what was she interested in?
Well, when they were in grade school, early on, we got a divorce and so forth, so I didn't really, I saw them on every other weekend as they were growing up, and then when they were in high school, they moved to Rio Rancho, New Mexico. So what was she like growing up? Kind of timid in a way, not an outgoing person, didn't want to be the first in line. She just kind of wanted to hold back a little bit, kind of reserved, shy would be a good word. But when we got together, we always had a great time together on those weekends, just up and ready to go for anything, no complaint about anything, no complaints about life or anything, just wanted to laugh and have a good time.
She sounds like an amazing person.
Well, she really was. She was very balanced. Always, people love to be around her, talk to her. And she worked at the TCA, as you know, there in Taos. I think people enjoyed just meeting her and getting tickets for the show, the events there, and so forth. Yeah, a good, positive person.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The only other question I have for you is, what can my listeners do to help your family and help with the case?
I think if they follow the investigation on Facebook and just be aware that that the investigation is still going on. Elaine is very dedicated to this, and of course, so am I. That's about really all that they can do. It's been 5 years and so forth, and if they have the interest and so forth, it's all what is on Facebook, Holly's Facebook page, and just keep in her prayers, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And I think that if anybody has information or knows anything, we would ask that who would you recommend they reach out to? Would that be Elaine?
Oh, absolutely. It's been over 5 years, and everybody has had the opportunity to, at any time, 24/7, 365, to call me or Elaine or email me or Elaine. They've had that opportunity, so it's kind of up to them what they feel that they want to contribute.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, Ray. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to share Holly's story, and my heart goes out to you and your family as you're still continuing to search for answers all this time. And I hope that there will be some sort of resolution that will give you those answers that you deserve and you need. And I just want to thank you so much for your time and for your honesty and for your willingness to speak with me.
Okay, Eric. Well, I did get on and check you out, the podcast and all that on line and so forth. Want to thank you very much for being the person you are and your interest in helping people and what you're doing for them, and as far as missing persons goes. And thank you very much for your interest in Holly's case.
The second interview I recorded is with the private investigator who is in charge of this case, who's been hired by Holly's family. Elaine has been working on this case from the beginning and is probably the most knowledgeable person about Holly's case. I wanted to just really touch base with her, have her give me feedback on the narrative that you just heard, as well as discuss some of the developments that have happened in Holly's case recently. Listen now as Elaine walks me through Holly's case. All right, so everyone has listened to the narrative now. First of all, I want to just say that there were some things that I came across during the research of Holly's case that were only mentioned in one media outlet. And some of those things have since been proven to not be factual. And so as I'm talking here with my guest in a moment, we're going to go through those things and correct them. Because I do want to be as factual as possible. It is difficult sometimes because you never know with what's out there in the media whether it's going to be accurate or not. So I always try to be very careful, but I definitely appreciate when people point those things out to me so that I can present the information as correctly as possible. So today I am joined by an extra special guest. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for inviting me onto your show. My name's Elaine Graves, and I'm a private investigator, and I am working on the Holly White case.
Welcome to the show, Elaine. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
when my researcher was looking at Holly's case, she said, "You've got to reach out to Elaine. You've got to talk to her," and I was very excited to hear your perspective and your point of view. But before we get into anything like that, I think that there are some corrections that we need to talk about regarding the narrative that everyone just listened to.
I think that there's a misconception out there that Holly had this intriguing secret life with money issues and a scandalous social life. That couldn't be further from the truth. Listen, we all have secrets. Did Holly keep some secrets from her closest friends? Yes, but we all do. Anyone who knows Holly knows that she's a very private person. Holly actually had a pretty mundane life. She didn't do drugs. She was not much of a drinker or a party girl. She was very stable, very professional. She had the same job, the same home, married to the same man, all for over 20 years. Her neighbors say that they could set their clocks by her schedule. So to say that she had secrets, yes, she did, but nothing of the caliber that some have made it out to be. I know that it adds to the sensationalism of the story, but it's really not completely accurate.
I certainly appreciate you bringing that up, and it's something that I talk about often on my show, that, the victims, there is no such thing as a perfect victim, number one, and I don't know why our society expects that to happen. Everybody has their own struggles and their own challenges and things that they're dealing with in their life. And just because somebody's struggle or challenges looks different than yours doesn't mean that it's any better or any worse. And I just appreciate you providing clarity, because I think that is something that I try to stay away from on my show, is sensationalism. I really want to focus on the facts, and I really want to help Holly's family by providing this platform for them to be able to get more people interested in the case and hopefully inspire somebody who might know something to come forward.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do today is, really keep Holly's case out there, really just appeal to the public for their help.
Were there any other things that were covered in the narrative that we need to address?
One thing that you mentioned was the black car that was seen at Holly's house around the time that she disappeared. I'm glad that you brought up the black car. I do have an interesting update on that. So a neighbor reported that they saw a black Toyota Solara parked in front of Holly's house the day before she disappeared. We've been searching for the owner of this car, not because he or she's necessarily implicated in anything, but to confirm that they did in fact see Holly on that day. And, just we want to know what they witnessed, what her demeanor was like, and that sort of thing. I went so far as to have this neighbor hypnotized. I felt that since he remembered the license plate so clearly, as far as like the letter coloring and the background coloring of the plate, that maybe under hypnosis he might recall the plate number. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a good combination of letters and numbers that, yielded anything useful. I have no problem stepping outside of the box and, using hypnosis or that sort of thing in any of my cases. After digging through thousands of plate numbers, VIN numbers, makes, models of cars, I have recently found someone who had association with Holly and drove a Toyota Solara at the time that Holly disappeared. So this is a really new development, and we're very anxious to see where this takes us.
Wow, that is, that's, I don't even want to say that it's good news, because it's not good news, but it's good to see that there is some developments happening and progress, being made even after all this time. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I know there was something about Holly's weight. What I read on some of the research wasn't completely accurate either. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, in the new posters that we have put out, Holly's weight is 275 instead of 200, which is what the state police originally put out. I have received all of Holly's medical records, and we've looked through them pretty closely. And she had been to the doctor shortly before she disappeared, and that's the weight that they have on there. And, the reason that is important is because if people are out there looking for her, we want the description to be as accurate as possible.
It's super important to have that information as accurate as possible. So thank you for correcting me on that. I had alluded to some similarities to a couple of other cases, and I think it's important for my listeners to know that the similarities really aren't as profound as it may have sounded in that original narrative. I think the main similarity that we have in common with these three cases is there's some activity around the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge, and I think that's probably where the similarities end with those two other cases. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I definitely agree with you there. You mentioned the Juan Munoz case, and that was an interesting one. I worked closely with a family during their searches for him. As you said, Juan disappeared in February, and then his body was recovered from the Rio Grande in May of this year. Juan had a lot going on in his life during the time that he disappeared. Among other things, he was recovering from COVID and seemed to be suffering from COVID long haulers symptoms. And then another thing that he was going through, he lost his girlfriend in a very tragic car wreck back in September of 2019. The country singer Kylie Ray Harris was driving drunk through the Taos area on her way to sing at a concert in Texas and crashed into another car. Juan's girlfriend was in that other car, and both drivers died in that wreck. So yeah, Juan was really distraught at that time, and since his body was recovered at the bottom of the bridge, it's safe to say that his death was ruled a suicide.
It's so tragic for his family, and my heart goes out to them because I know they were looking for him for quite a while.
Yes, a very sad case. But the family has some closure now, which helps them a lot.
Anything else that we need to correct from the original narrative?
No, I was just going to add that I had the pleasure of speaking with a Taos County Commissioner this morning. We were talking about the bill that was passed and signed by our governor, which gave Taos County $150,000 for upgrades to the Gorge Bridge, which will include cameras. She told me that the money has been approved but not appropriated yet, and it looks like this process will be complete in about 6 months. So that's good news. The cameras, it'll help us to know that someone has actually jumped from the bridge when their cars are found there before actually spending so much time and resources on these searches when it's possible that the person that we're looking for maybe was not even there. So this is a huge improvement for Taos County, and we've waited a very long time for this.
Absolutely. I think it's a step in the right direction, and I'm hopeful that we can see continued improvements. Even if we can look at things like netting and platforms to help reduce some of the suicide activity that is happening there.
Definitely.
Do you know if the case is still classified as a missing person, or has it been ruled a homicide?
My investigation is separate from the New Mexico State Police's investigation. I have not changed the classification of my case. I'm still calling it a missing persons case. And as far as I know, the New Mexico State Police is still calling it a missing persons case.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's hard to upgrade a case to homicide without a body.
I think we do see it happen, but it happens very rarely. And there has to be a lot of circumstantial evidence around it to make that happen. So,
yes.
Anything that you want to share beyond what we've talked about before we get into what my listeners can do for the case?
We're so grateful to you, Eric, and the True Consequences podcast people over there for helping us keep Holly's story alive and out there. A lot of time has passed since Holly disappeared. We're going on 6 years now. But, this case is by no means cold. We still have people calling in with tips and sightings, and, each one is checked out completely. I would not call this a cold case. We're still working on it. I work on Holly's case just about every day, and we're going to find her. It may take some time, but we're not going to stop looking anytime soon.
It is truly an honor and my pleasure to be able to provide this platform for Holly's family and for Holly and for everybody involved in this case. I am very passionate about helping people in New Mexico that are seeking justice or that are trying to find their missing loved ones. It's something that is very close to my heart. I feel like, without sounding too pretentious, I do feel like this is a bit of a calling for me. So it's absolutely my pleasure to do this. And thank you for speaking with me and sharing Holly's story with me as well. I appreciate that.
We're grateful for you. You're doing great work, Eric, and we're so grateful, and we're all blessed to have you. Thank you.
What can my listeners do to help with Holly's case if they want to get involved?
We're appealing to anyone who was in the Taos area in May of 2016 who might remember something that could help us find Holly. Maybe you were a tourist at the bridge that first weekend in May. Maybe you took photographs of the bridge while you were there that I can take a look at. Anything like that. All of these things help, and we really need the public's help at this time. If you think that you remember anything, or maybe you saw something, you can call our tip line number at 575-613 613-3415. You can message me on the Find Holly White Facebook page and also go there for updates. We also have a GoFundMe account to help continue the search, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
I'm going to include the links to all of those social media links as well as the GoFundMe, and I'll even include the tip line in the show notes of the show. So if you're listening to this right now, you can scroll down on your podcatcher and click on those links directly. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, just to say thank you again. And we're so grateful. Holly's family is so grateful for all of your help on this.
Thank you, Elaine, and send my love and condolences to Ray and the rest of the family. My heart is with them, and I hope that we can together see some traction here soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for listening, everyone, and stay safe, New Mexico. If you have any information related to the disappearance of Holly White and believe you could help investigators in this case, please call Elaine Graves at 575-613-3415. You can also submit tips through the Find Holly White Facebook page. Or you could call the New Mexico State Police at 505-454-5010. A $20,000 reward is currently being offered by Holly's father for any information that could lead to Holly's whereabouts. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, New Mexico. Thanks for listening to True Consequences. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at True Consequences Pod, and on Twitter at TrueConsPod. True Consequences is listener supported. If you'd like to support this one-man show, please go to patreon.com/trueconsequences. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, New Mexico.